One of the true gifts in life is meeting people who inspire you, who motivate you, who teach you. Luis Maria Duarte was a Paraguayan diplomat. He was that person to me. He was accomplished, professional, kind. I met Luis when we were both election observers with the National Democratic Institution in Pakistan last spring. It was my first time observing an election. He was a pro, having observed elections in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Lebanon, Peru, Bangladesh. Luis worked for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and he was a senior advisor to the Vice President of Paraguay. A couple of months ago, he was in Washington, D.C., and we had lunch, and we caught up and talked about life. He was working on a book, and we talked about what he was going to do when he was done observing the elections in Afghanistan, and of course, his future as president of Paraguay. He was not a soldier, a Marine, or a Navy SEAL. He wasn't trained to fight, so when he would travel to high conflict zones, he, like me and many of our colleagues, would stay in heavily fortified hotels or diplomatic housing. On March 20th, Taliban insurgents infiltrated the Serena Hotel where he was staying in Kabul, and he was killed. My friend was someone who promoted democracy and governance all over the world in conflict zones so that countries like Afghanistan would be peaceful, but instead he became a victim of terrorism. Excuse me. Extreme poverty is one of the greatest humanitarian crises of our time, and a fundamental contributing factor to 21st century terrorism. Now, when I say this, I'm not talking about the lack of material resources that are needed to meet a person's basic needs. I'm talking about one critical component. When an individual lacks the opportunity to make the meaningful choices that will sustainably improve their life. Sir Syed, an Indian Muslim social activist and philosopher from the 19th century, once said, "When a nation becomes devoid of arts and learning, it invites poverty. And when poverty comes, it brings in its wake thousands of crimes." Today, I'm here to talk to you about education in Pakistan and how indigenous solutions are the key to fighting extremism and taking back society. Pakistan is in the midst of a long and painful crisis. Since 2001, 45,000 Pakistanis have died in terrorist-related violence. In 2011, it was estimated that 40% of Pakistan's school-age children were not in school. This is actually one of the highest numbers in the world. Karachi alone is one of the least educated megacities in the world, and this is Pakistan's largest city. When you travel in Pakistan, you see the same stories. You see kids at traffic signals selling flowers or knickknacks. You see them working in mechanic shops, or you see them begging in the streets. Last year, a report that was issued by UNICEF concluded that kids who didn't receive an education in Pakistan would be prone to child labor, poverty, and gender biases, amongst a host of many other deep-rooted concerns. Education is on the front lines of Pakistan's struggle with militancy. And we all know that militancy is not confined by borders. Now, I'm not here to really get into the debate about the links between education and extremism. The roots of radicalism are actually quite complex and multifaceted. But I do believe that education offers choice. So given the extent of the education emergency and the scale of its implications, who is doing something about it and where is the impact? This is where the Citizens Foundation comes in. The Citizens Foundation is a Pakistani solution to a Pakistani problem. It's an education NGO that provides affordable primary and secondary private education to low-income students with a specific focus on girls. The organization to date has built 1,000 schools all across the country in urban slums and rural communities. And they have created an organization that is trusted by donors in that their contributions are being honestly and efficiently spent. There are chapters all over the world. I was so impressed by the work that they were doing that I helped start the chapter in Washington, D.C. So how do they get started? It's actually an incredible story. In 1995, there were 6 local businessmen who were tired of just talking about the ills of Pakistan. And so they decided that instead of criticizing the government or blaming the West for not providing enough foreign assistance, they would move beyond words to action. So they did. This education NGO is an example of civil society taking matters into their own hands when national governments can't respond to urgent problems like illiteracy. So why does this particular education model work in a country like Pakistan when so many other education models have failed? And why have not one of these schools been targeted by insurgent elements when so many militants have attacked schools in Pakistan? There are 3 reasons: infrastructure, location, and community buy-in. Infrastructure. So it's really not just the Taliban that are keeping kids out of school in Pakistan. There are also very basic infrastructure issues like basic facilities that are not in place in Pakistan. For example, toilets and clean drinking water. According to a study last year, 164,000 public schools that were surveyed, 42% did not have toilets. So this organization makes sure that all of their schools have the infrastructure that is needed for any educational experience. Things like clean drinking water, electricity, which is hard to come by in Pakistan because it's in the middle of an energy crisis. It's been that way for about the last 10 years or so. Safe, separate toilets for boys and girls, and of course, just generally a safe building. Location. Why is location important in a country like Pakistan? Violence and fear of safety keep a lot of young girls at home. Globally, over 50% of sexual assaults that happen to girls under the age of 15, and this is even more exacerbated in third world societies. So this organization brings the schools to the communities. They make sure that all of their schools are easily accessible in the middle of communities with a security guard to protect the students. In addition, all of the teachers are female so that parents have further confidence that their little girls are safe. Community buy-in, what does that mean? There's been so many debates as to why foreign assistance doesn't have the impact that many donors want. Certain communities within Pakistan are just not okay with foreign involvement in their educational systems because they're suspicious of the ideological motivation behind such involvement. They're wary that a foreign-backed curriculum would try to undermine their existing institutions or their moral framework. So because of this environment, this organization, this educational NGO, makes sure that all of their schools are seen as indigenous and neutral. Now, there have been times when certain factions within communities have tried to associate the Citizens Foundation schools with foreign backers, but the organization's workers have actually dealt with the opposition quite thoughtfully by utilizing a method that's not uncommon in Pakistan, which is sitting down with community elders, listening to their concerns, and taking them into confidence. Instead of backing down before extremist pressures, all of the community's teachers become integral parts of the community, and so they're not seen as outsiders imposing an ideology upon their children. This attitude kind of sets this organization apart from so many other international development organizations, well-intentioned, who have not had the success that they want, especially in rural communities, because they haven't learned how to navigate Pakistan's unique cultural sensitivities. This is Anam Fatima. She went to a Citizens Foundation school, and then she went on to university at the International Business Management School in Karachi. While she was at university, she applied for a State Department scholarship for women, and she was selected to go to Harvard for 3 months. It's so amazing how a girl like her, who was from a far-flung slum in Pakistan, had the opportunity to go to one of the most prestigious universities in the world. As a former government official, I know that America's own foreign assistance efforts can be enhanced by parallel projects run by NGOs. I worked on international development in Afghanistan and Pakistan for USAID and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and I was able to evaluate the impact of our country's own foreign assistance efforts. But it also allowed me to realize the limits of foreign assistance. Many of you will end up working in an institution or a bureaucracy, a hospital, a law firm, a company, maybe even the government. And these are all great places to work. They're strong foundations for really any career. But I would encourage you that if you find a problem that can't be fixed in an institution, find another way, like the founders of the Citizens Foundation did. My friend Luis traveled to the most dangerous countries in the world because he really felt that citizens should have a say, a voice, a vote in the future of their country. And like Luis, the founders of the Citizens Foundation showed optimism and courage in the face of great challenge. And because of their efforts, children like Anam Fatma finally have a way to beat the vicious cycle of poverty and have the opportunities to make the meaningful choices that will sustainably change their life. Thank you so much.